So the Columbian Exchange began with the arrival of the Europeans in North and South America, and it lasted for centuries. What the Columbian Exchange means is the exchange of people, goods, ideas, crops, animals, and diseases across the Atlantic. And as you can see from this map, some of the crops and products coming from North America was tobacco, peppers, sweet potatoes, squash, pumpkins, turkeys. All these things were native to the Americas. Also, tomatoes, corn, potatoes, peanuts. Things coming from Europe was large domesticated animals such as cattle and sheep and pigs, horses, many grains, um, also diseases were some of the major things that were coming over also with the Europeans to the New World. So here's some pictures of domesticated animals. So on the top left, you see the horse, and that came from Europe. It wasn't native to North America, but the Native Americans started to use it especially the Plains Indians, for their hunting and warfare. And there you see a picture of them hunting a buffalo with the horse. Then we have sheep in the bottom left-hand corner and cattle in the bottom right. So some of the crops here, we see corn on the right, or maize. So Indians taught Europeans about tobacco, which we see in the bottom right, and potatoes, corn, beans, and tomatoes. And you see the beans in the bottom left. So these were all native to North America and various parts of the Americas. And many of the Native Americans were already farming many of these crops. The Europeans, on the other hand, introduced rice, oats, wheat, barley, and grapes to the Indians through the Columbian Exchange. Diseases. So Europeans brought smallpox, influenza, and measles and killed millions of Native Americans who weren't immune to these because Europeans had developed immunities by living with large domesticated animals for years, for centuries, and Native Americans hadn't been exposed because these diseases are transmitted and they mutate from large domesticated animals like pigs and cows, and then they get into human populations, and then over time, humans build immunities to them. But when the Europeans arrived in the Native Americans in America, the Native Americans had never been exposed to any of these diseases before. So the Indians had no defense against these European germs that were imported, which meant, as we'll talk about more, is that 90% of the population of Native Americans died shortly after European contact, within about 100 years or so. Weapons. So this was another major influence of Europeans on the Americas. And here you see in the top left a European holding a spear and a sword, wearing armor, mounted on top of a horse. So using iron weapons was something unique to the Europeans that the Native Americans didn't have access to. Also gunpowder, and here you see in the bottom left the gun and a cannon in the bottom right. Gunpowder originally came from China, but had been spread to Europe, and they were using primitive guns at this time, but still effective against the Native American population. And finally, people. And this was one of the major changes, one of the major parts of the Columbian Exchange was Europeans and Africans coming over to the New World. So the English sent more settlers than any other European nation to the New World, mostly because they were settling for agricultural purposes and economic opportunities, and they heavily populated the eastern part of North America. In the bottom right, you see a picture representing mestizos, and that's a combination of a white man and a Native American woman, and the child is the mestizo, the mixed race. And so with the arrival of the Spanish, an entirely new population developed and emerged throughout, uh, especially South America, the mestizo race. And then, of course, we have about 10 million African slaves being transported to the Americas to work on plantations. And here in the top right hand corner, you see that. So, from when the slave trade began, really in the early 1500s, until it ended in the 1800s, about 10 million African slaves arrived in the New World.